Now there's never found a body in here, but they wouldn't because it's acid soil. It does wonderful things to human bodies, acid soil, unless it's Lindo Common or one of the peaty bogs where they come out with leather skin after 5,000 years. But here, the bones have gone in 50 years here. I'm told by an archaeologist who specialises in death, Trevor Kirk, Dr. Trevor Kirk, that in fact all you find is a green stain. So we'll all end up being green. So I think that's quite pleasant, yeah. The entry to this was thought to be through that very narrow entrance there, and the solar thing at the back, the parabola at the back, faces south. So the capstone doesn't face true north. It points at a monument which is over here in a field, which you can't see easily with the naked eye, called Trelifant, which means Toad Hall. So in Welsh, Trelifant, and that makes a geometry which I'm not going to talk about. But and that's the west point, and Lecca, which is over there, that dolmen that we looked at, is at right angles to that. Okay, and that's because this is a north-south line through. If that's west, then north-south to Bardsey is through this other monument on the ridge again. So everything is based on the ridge in the Preselis, and you can see that. But you can see that quite clearly, the dolmen there. Now, for those of you with good eyesight, there's a big lump of tree that's a big lump. It wasn't there 10 years ago, so it's obviously the climate must be changing desperately. Not. If we go along the ridge, there's another higher spot, and you can see a little lump on the ridge. That's the monument. So if you borrow these binoculars, then you not only get the binoculars, but this one gives you a compass bearing accurate to a degree or two. These are very special, these. They don't make them anymore because they're useful.
Useful for people like us.
And you can see quite clearly the monument I'm talking about. The large tree with a lump on, and I'm right on it there. And it's really standing out now, black against the horizon. Depends on the light. And there we are, and I'm reading 360 degrees, so which is naught. You can see a sort of slight conical flat cone. That's Kriegi Chemice, and in winter when there's nothing on the gorse or anything, that stands out. And all over the Preselis you see that site, and that forms between Lecca and that forms the 5 side of a 51213 with the summit of Carningli. And so accurate is that, and it fits in megalithic yards such that it records. It's a symbolic representation of their knowledge of the sun and the moon. Now, you don't have to take my word for it. You can go home and go on Google Earth and find those, put a tag on them, put a tag on the summit of Carningli and measure it for yourself. And it will tell you the altitudes as well. And that site and Lecca are both at the same height above sea level, 619 feet above sea level. I mean, that's getting on for 1,040 feet. So it's not. Now, to conceive of a triangle of that size, where there is no reality to it, other than the 3 sites that define it, is a very clever way of making sure that it isn't discovered unless people have a bit of consciousness.
Yes.
It can't be. For example, the Romans never discovered any of this. Our archaeologists didn't. So you've got to have a certain level of consciousness to reckon. You've got to know geometry, which is what Plato said. At the entrance of his academy, he said, no one who does not know geometry can enter here. So geometry is the fundamental thing here. It's the fundamental tool with which the universe is created. And we're starting to see that more and more. Even scientists are starting to play with Fibonacci series and other forms of mathematical series to create shapes that are found in nature. And it's been very popular to look at flower seeds and flower growth and see, the Fibonacci series. 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, blah, blah, 34, 55, 81, blah, blah, blah. 89, not 81. So there's Lecca up on the top of the hill. There's Kriegi Chemice, and there's Carningli. We're looking sideways on. The 13 side of the triangle goes from Carningli to that point. The 12 side goes to the dolmen there, Lecca, and the right angle is at Lecca. And the capstone has a right angle structure built into it. So there's another clue. I mean, the signs are there. So I would like you to be somewhat retrospective in the sense that that is the one site when we're here that you could go home and look at and just confirm the lengths of the sides. The 13th side is 25,078 feet. Okay, this is on Google Earth to the nearest foot. The 12th side is 23,150 feet, and there is a construction within this triangle to make the intermediate hypotenuse that gives you the solar year. So 12 lunar months runs in megalithic yards to that one, 13 to that one, and there is a stone called a trefoil stone that is right placed to make another 3, 4, 5 triangle to define the... We're going to make a lunation triangle later in the day. I've got the rope to do it, so we're going to play with this. But I'm going to tell you that structure is so accurate that you could use it as it tells the whole structure of the Sun, Moon, Earth system. And as we'll see later, you can also forecast eclipses with it. So this single symbol, I reckon, is a symbol of ancient times that has been lost to us. And I've been working with it since I found it again when I went to France and saw the relationship between Stonehenge and the Bluestone site. And there is a 12, 5, 13 arrangement in Stonehenge with the 4 standing stones, well, the station stone rectangle. I believe you had someone talking about that last night.
Paul Berry.
Yeah. So there is a 512 rectangle in the middle of Stonehenge. It's a very accurate. Aubrey Bill calls it a near perfect rectangle, and I've personally theodolited it twice. Alexander Thom did, and I've no reason to doubt that it was intentional. Although the archaeologists never agree on it, but it doesn't really matter what they do. They're very good at doing things like dental records and analysing flint tools and cataloguing stuff. But maybe it's more anthropology we're talking about here. It's how the human mind was working with the physical environment. This field was cleaned up because it was littered with stones and they were clutter. So they moved them all about 25 years ago. There was a row of stones along here. You can see old pictures of it in books, particularly books by Evan Haddington and people who were writing in the 80s. Brinsley-le-Poor Trench has a good picture of this site with all the UFO man, ex-brother of the headmaster of Eton. Something odd about Eton, isn't there? It produces weirdos. We've got John Michel, John Martineau, I mean, it's just amazing. It produces people because they're taught Platonic Greek education. There's no magic as to how that happens. They're already primed when they leave school.
Also, it's built on a hill, which lends itself to various things. We did a bit of a lecture on it a couple of years ago. It's not
Eton.
It's not an accident, but it is where it is.
Well, it's got a salt hill, hasn't it?
Yeah, that's down the road. Isn't
Yeah,
it?
but I mean, they all go there.
I have to go there once a
to
year.
play Eton, don't they? But there's another cow unit down there. Let's change the subject. That's an 800 unit, right next to a holiday camp, so it must be wonderful and the wind's in the right direction. That's Newport Bay, where you're all based. Okay. About 12 o'clock the Irish ferry will come in and you'll see a great big white brick coming in. That's Carningli. Now I want to draw your attention to these stones here. Are you all able to hear me?
Yeah.
I can put the microphone on if you want. Or do my Brian Blessed impression.
Oh, don't do that.
No. So there's a set of stones that are called Carn Wen, which means the cairns of the brothers Owen. And there were 3 brothers. Funny because there's 4 cairns, but Welsh mathematics is very difficult. And they have a story and myth. They gave their lives for the country in the Glendower period of Wales. I believe it's the Glendower period, but Bart will know far more about all this than I have. But the issue is here that these stones are highly significant, but it took me a long time to find out how highly significant they are. And you have to wait for certain times in an 18.6-year cycle of the moon, because this end one here records the setting of the minor standstill of the moon, of the minor standstill of the moon, and the one at the end there, the left-hand side, at midwinter the sun goes down the edge of that, or did in 3500 BC, and it's not very satisfactory. You don't know where to stand, it's not very long, so it's not, but the sun slips down there very early in the day because it's quite elevated. So the sun has set it by about 3:10 or something in midwinter. So everyone who comes looking when sunset is, has missed it. This is not a blue stone. That one's not. Some of those are blue stones, but that capstone is what's called, I think it's just rhyolite. It's not this stuff. Big, flat stone, which is what we call an FBS in the trade. It's a very big stone in Welsh. And you look up the hill, and the midwinter sun in 3000 BC went into the chamber and then down the side of that thing. It's aligned. And if you carry on up the hill to the other side, although it's summer now and you probably can't see it, but in that clearing in the forest there, that's where Pentre, the Iron Age fort is. And they're all on the same alignment. And that way does the midwinter sun set, and the other way goes all the way up to mid-Wales to Cadair Idris. And that takes, and picks up the major moon every 18.6 years rising. So this does two things. It does it because the horizon's not level. It's a trick of the horizon. But I've actually been here and done that measurement. So if you look at that stone, it's got two great big cut marks like eyes looking at you. Come down to the front edge, the dark edge, the edge facing us, and there's two eyes looking at you. That's remained because it weighs nearly an infinite number of tons, and no one was going to risk moving it. So mine, Coal and Samson, there's a PDF file free of charge on my website telling you all about this and the work that was done. It goes through Pentre Ifan. There's even a mock picture of the sun setting, and it's mock because I haven't been successful in finding a sunny sunset at midwinter I've been able to get a proper photograph, and it wouldn't be for 3500 BC anyway. You have to accept that the Earth's obliquity, the tilt of the Earth, has changed since it's gone from 24 degrees to 23.5. And at winter, when the sun is setting like that, it represents about 1.5 degrees on the flat. The difference between then and now and where it sets. So we had longer days, shorter days in midwinter then, and longer days in summer than we do now.
I remember those.
Yes. That's good.
Robin, what about that with a big pile of stones and 2 fields?
Well, they are all part of what was here, but they've all been, most of them have been dragged. There's a great pile. If you go in this field, if you trespass in this field, can you see all these stones here? Yeah. They were all dragged down the hill, and they're all in a big heap. Some of them have got carvings on them. And I don't think they've been catalogued or anything. No. It's vandalism on a massive scale, you see, but it's not thought of as vandalism because this site had to be tidy. All right. And there we've got the moon. Yeah. So a waning moon.
There must have been a lot of exchange between the Irish and West Wales, do you think? Was it a difficult sea to cross?
It's a major seaway.
Yeah.
It was like the M5 in Bronze Age times. We don't know about the earlier because we've not found the ships.
Was St Patrick supposed to be Welsh?
He was kidnapped though.
Yeah.
And he was a bit strange.
Yes.
There's quite a few villages with place names with Kill, C-I-L, at the beginning of it. That's the Irish.
Well, that's the 6th century. Yeah. Because this area was overtaken, but when the Romans fled, because they thought they were going to get invaded, they all went to Gaul, to Brittany, and most of the wealthy Welsh went with them, and became America became Little Britain. Bretagne. Yeah. And so that Irish thing was that the Irish protectorate here joined up with the local tribes, and they eventually, believe it or not, they don't do it in rugby, but they got on so well that they intermarried. But by the 9th century, the Vikings came in and the raids got worse, and the Saxons were, well, the English have always been a problem. The Wales, they are an amazing race of people because they've been more conquered than almost any other race you can think of.
More castles per square mile.
Yes, and they fought over them, and the Welsh princes were always rowing, and then they got much bigger forces, just came in and just took it, and then they had to get together, they had to agree and fight back, and so the Irish had this place for 6 centuries. Okay, and
the birds come over.
There's a red kite. Yeah. It's got RAF roundels on the wing.
Just seeing what we're doing down there.
It's a D-Day one with the white stripes.
In a circle.
Yeah. Anybody juicy down here?
So from that we can conclude that in 6 days' time it'll be the dark moon. which wouldn't be a good time to be doing this then. It's okay to...
This is a prime time.
Because it's a quiet time, the moon. It's not... If you go to a party when it's a new moon, it's one of those parties where you wonder why you went often. Everyone just sits around being heavy. The one thing that works in my favour with what I do as a megalithic scientist is that I've assumed for my work one quality, which is that the monument remains where it was put. Because it would be very hard to move it 6 inches to the left, or indeed to take it, unless you've got modern tools. Until the last century, they were pretty safe. A big cart horse or two could shift a 4-ton stone, 5-ton stone easily. And the gateposts around here are, many of those, you can find them in the gateposts. Yeah. There's one area, I'm not going to tell you where it is, there's one area where I think I might have found the biggest stone circle with the biggest stones in Wales. But they've all been turned into gateposts. And when you map where they're found, you can see that it's pointing to this particular field, and the view from that field tells me that that's where it was for various reasons. So that's work in progress. Never a dull moment, but there's lots of times when you can't get out on the land here. It's either too wet or it's too dull. The wind's too high. You can't put a theodolite up when it's very windy. It's just all over the place, and you can't take a reading from it. So a day like today would be perfect, except it's a bit hot. You have to put a plastic bucket over the theodolite when you're not using it. Next to the brown field on the right, you can see the capstone, and you can see that there are people there. And that is where, that middle bit, from this point, is where the moon every 18.618 years would have risen in 3500 BC. That middle part of Cadair Idris, the actual throne bit, the tallest bit, the summit, the moon comes up out of there. I have to, now because of the change in the Earth's tilt, I have to be down there to see that.
Can you be exact? Whereabouts on Cadair does the moon cover?
Well, it doesn't now.
Or what is that?
Doesn't rise on Cadair at all now. But in 3500 BC, it rose at the summit.
At Pennegadder, the actual summit?
Yes, the top.
Yeah.
Yes, the top.
So I would have guessed a bit further to the west where you got the little screeing pond below.
Yes, the very cold lake.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, there's a little pond.
Yeah.
And the local farmer told me the monks from Cumrabbey used to go up there and scree in it. Looks down from the... anyway, no story.
Well, all I can tell you is that the moon, when you correct the distance from here, it rises at the middle. Now, I don't know, we don't know, because we've no proof that they ever used it for a lunar major thing, but it's a clever thing. And in between Pentre Ifan and that summit is the Iron Age fort, which you can see. You can see can you see the roundhouses with their conical things? And they're on the alignment from Pentre Ifan. See it? And then we've got Snowdon, of course, which you can see. And we've got the Theme Peninsula.
Which is Snowdon?
Over the sea.
So the moon rises at this time of year?
No, this is every 18.6 years. The moon will rise at its once a month, its most northerly position. This is 40 degrees north. Here, at this latitude it's 40 degrees. It was at the time. So it rises then, and then for every other month after that it rises a bit more, less extreme to the north. So it's over here. Okay, but then it comes up to the north, and then you get a few full moons and a few moons, a few maximums around that time when it reaches this most northerly place, and they marked it. And here it's marked by Pentre Ifan, around one of the roundhouses that's been demolished and is being rebuilt. Is missing there, but that's in line. You can see one of the huts, the smaller one, and there is another site which you can see. You see the aerial on the horizon. There's an aerial sticking up.
Yeah, there's two.
Well, to the left of that, that's in St Dogmell's. In the field there, in Cumdegwell, there's a huge standing stone exactly at the right place. And no one knows what it's for. It's right on the edge of a precipitous valley that the road runs down the bottom of. And So that's part of that arrangement. And we come along the ridge there to the Bluestone site. There's inconveniently, they've built the TV aerial for the region on the other side of that, which is, you know, you have to Photoshop that out when you get home. And then we've got a couple of cairns. At the top of Foelfeddau, the top of the cairn, which means Bald Hill of the Many Graves, there is a vesica piscis shape at the top with a hole. And it could be a folk memory, this monster story, of putting bodies in that vesica shape, because that's from birth we come out of a vesica, and in death perhaps there was the thing that we would come back. And of course the bones would then be disarticulated and brought for other, if it was an important burial, and the archaeologists think that they were brought back down. But this idea of laying a corpse out and letting the wild birds have it is a very druidic thing, because, you know, air burial, you see. And so
Bart, when we were on the survey, he didn't know this, but he found the lays all converging on Foelfeddau. He decided that Foelfeddau must be a hub.
Well, if you go from Bardsey Island, which we can now see, and you come across Lecadribeth, which we've just seen, through Pentre Ifan, you end up about 50 yards to the right of Foelfeddau, which is where all the dowsers have ever taken up say that's where the most energy is. There's a big quartz boulder, not movable by man.
Oh, so that could be the hub.
And that could be the hub.
Could be.
But that's the alignment, and then it goes over the Preselis, and I can't trace it after that. This is, I think that was, from there you can see Bardsey Island, it's 53 miles away, and from Lecadribeth it's 47.5 miles, so it's not a short distance for a straight line. You could call that a lay, I think, couldn't you? You've got 1, 2, 3, 4 points, and possibly more. Yeah, Watkins would have been happy with that, I think. So we have got a megalithic landscape here. This area here is littered with standing stones, dolmens. This is one of the major regions of the United Kingdom, and certainly, probably, apart from North Wales and Anglesey in particular, there are no thicker concentrations of various types of megalithic monument. For dolmens, Pembrokeshire's about as good as it gets. Someone mentioned Strata Florida, which is this abbey up in Mid Wales that was moved by the monks. Yeah. It was originally at a place that's now called Abbey Farm, and they moved it, and I think they moved it geodetically. But if you go home and put a straight line on from Stonehenge to Bryn Celyn on Anglesey, which was the slide you saw yesterday with the 345, if you run the hypotenuse, the longest side of that triangle, it runs through Strata Florida, and above Strata Florida, on the hill, is a flat platform with a cairn on it that is actually on that alignment, and from there you can take an observation of the midsummer sunset between Bardsey Island, into the sea between Bardsey Island and the mainland. But that's not my story. My story is that near Strata Florida are some kist sites, that's graves, open graves, and they are my megalithic yard measure wedges in that bit, and it's 2 megalithic yards by 1. It's a 2 by 1 square made up of megalithic yards, and there are 2 of them, as if to say, well, you know, one might be an accident, but so that was it was a woman called Irene Harris, who's sadly passed away now, who showed me those kists in 2003, and I ended up going back and surveying from this platform, and it led me to discover this lay from Stonehenge, or this line, this geodetic pattern from Stonehenge up to Bryn Celyn, which is the grove of the
Black Hill, Dark Hill.
Yeah, and again the horizon does interesting things because it's aligned to the same angle as the triangle as the midsummer sunrise. Right, now let's get this straight. Bryn Celyn, you're all listening?
Yeah.
Right, sir.
Sir. Yes, sir.
It's going back, isn't it? Bryn Celyn, the latitude of Bryn Celyn is 53 degrees north and about 9 minutes. Okay? The angle of the 345 triangle, one of them, is 53 degrees and 9 minutes. The midsummer sunrise angle at Bryn Celyn, because of this black hill that is elevated, is 53 degrees and 9 minutes. No. I ask you, you can't now tell me that that is an accident. And the passage angle of the later structure, it was originally a stone circle, but the later structure, the passage angle is 53 degrees and 9 minutes. I mean, they're all within a couple of minutes of a degree, which we can forgive, because that's precision under anybody's. And those three things coming together are megalithic science. It's astronomy, geometry, and metrology, because the units of length used make a 3-4-5 triangle in units of length that John Michel discovered independently. 240 over 7 miles. It's so many royal cubits. So I would like to say to you that you tell people when they say it's all silly, this stuff, that they might, you put them right about that, because that one single site contains a gem. And the secret of that gem is that all the angles are the same as the geometry from Stonehenge. If you take that geometry and take it across the English Channel, eventually it'll come to Chartres Cathedral, which, as everybody who's read up on Chartres Cathedral will know, was a very famous Gaulish Celtic site long before there was a cathedral there. It's pre-Christian. And they have rebuilt over that crypt many, many times. It's to the Black Virgin. So we're into areas much before Christianity that were revived by flagging Roman Catholics in the 11th century. The idea of the Black Virgin sort of leaked out to the point where they couldn't hold it back. So it became, at Walsingham, for example, in Norfolk, it became de rigueur to start towing an effigy of a black woman around, or a black virgin around, allegedly a virgin. I don't know what tests were done, but I think that we are on the threshold of beginning to break each bit of this jigsaw starts to reveal bigger pieces, and when you get to a point with the jigsaw where that bit now slots in to that big bit, I think I'm almost seeing the picture on the lid now. Another couple of years and I'll be able to retire, which Hugh Newman says I've been threatening for 10 years, or promising for 10 years. So my story is now getting to the point where I think I've got a coherent picture of the main capabilities of the people that lived here in terms of megalithic science. Logan, just over, it's on the next one, isn't it? You can see it from the ground more easily. And Dol Cathedral. Dol in St Samson's Cathedral in Dol. Connect the three of them. Measure the triangle. I love this stone. I came here in 2 foot of snow. I've got a picture of me sort of freezing to death, and my wife, who's already passed on, pressing the trigger. And it was quite fearsome up here. There was a strong wind that took your face off. But it's a great photograph because all of this is white, and you can see Foel Feddai towering above us. But you can see the cairn, and you can see the two ends of the vesica. Anno asked me about the Drover's Path. Yeah, that is one of the Golden Way. The Drover's Path is from South Pentre across the Preseli. Is part of a network of lines that John Michel refers to in View Atlantis, connecting Pembrokeshire with Southampton. Now, we all thought in the 60s, well, he must have gone in boat across the Bristol Channel and ended up in North Devon and down Southampton. But in fact, what John meant was that you went along the South Wales coast across at Flatholm and Steepholm and down to the Isle of Wight, St Catherine's Point, near Southampton. Now, if you come back this way, the interesting thing is that St Vinnic's Church, his established church, is right on that line. So and where it crosses the channel is Laverne, which is Right, so, you know, and the next church in Cowbridge is on the line, within a mile.
Cambridge, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, well, yes, Cambridge, yeah. Ford motor cars, it's better known for today. And it goes through, it goes through 2 Castell Mowers, the line, the one we did yesterday and the one near on the way to Carmarthen. It goes through the lunatic asylum in Carmarthen, which is, they're well known to be cited on PowerPoints. Traditional Victorian asylums are commonly built on what you would call a lay, but often a point of interesting earth energy, telluric forces. Is I look at stones and I look at monuments as though they are verbs, not nouns. They do things on the landscape. You are looking at what they do on the landscape. What I'm trying to do is to give people, if you like, an alternative map to the modern one, where they can navigate around this area by triangles and by north-south alignments. And from now on, if you ever hear about this stone, you'll know exactly what it's doing here. It was put here in order to fulfill some, which we don't understand, some Neolithic surveying purpose, possibly to set up a north-south line in the Preselis that they could refer to and transfer elsewhere by using right angles and things. And we won't ever find that because maybe they were done with wooden stakes. But this is here as a permanent reminder of that. Someone wanted people later on to come and find out what had happened. So this is related to Pentre Ifan. Now there's another thing that you won't find in the books. So I'm trying to rewrite a book and tell people about what these stones do and present the Neolithic landscape in a way that is, I think, more interesting than the archaeological story, often. Whereas, no, if the minute you say Pentre Ifan is forming part of an equilateral triangle with Carningli, the chamber at Carningli, that then takes the whole thing an octave or 2 octaves or 3 octaves higher up on the consciousness thing. So something's going on.
Carn Wen is the source of the Stonehenge blue stones. Carn Wen, the corner of the Stonehenge lunation triangle.
I'm down now, the accuracy is getting better. So if I'll give you this as accurately, it'll be good. Be within. Okay. Okay. If you're ready to copy down the latitude and longitude, this wasn't available in Tom's time. You got it off the map, and you could get it to within 20 feet, no problem. We probably can get, well, even a commercial GPS will give you to that. So it's 51 degrees, 55 minutes, and 55.869 minutes.
51 degrees, 55 minutes.
0.869. And then the longitude is 4 degrees, 42 minutes, 0.805, 42.805 minutes. And the elevation is 631 feet. Okay. So that's done that difficult thing off the map very quickly. Now if you come into a stone circle like this, because we've blocked most of the stones, have a look at those stones over there. You can see that we've got, it's not a circle, it's a circular type shape. So there are several ways of doing a plan of this, one of which, and the way which Alexander Thom did first of all, was a preliminary plan is to put your theodolite somewhere near the middle. You don't know where the middle is, it's not known. You might guess that's the middle, it's not. You might guess this is the middle, you might guess that's the middle. With a theodolite, which you put a welder's glass over that, otherwise you won't be able to see when you're not measuring the sun, because you won't have any eyes left. So you shoot the sun and you time with a chronometer, which these days is a radio clock. You time and you get the exact time and you track with the cross wires till the sun is in the middle of those cross wires. There's several ways of doing it. One of them, you look at the edge of the sun and then the other edge and you time the period in between. So you shoot the sun, if it's visible. You can shoot the moon. Lots of people have tried that. The Russians have had a go at doing that, Americans. The moon's, is it no longer with us? It will have set now probably. But the moon's just as good. You shoot the sun and then when you get back to the ranch you can refer all measurements to that one, and you can get the actual north position. But normally what you do to find north is you shoot the sun, and then you have a reference object like that TV aerial. You see the TV aerial sticking up. That is a theodolitist dream, because if it wasn't vertical it would have collapsed. So you can align the verticality of your telescope to the maximum advantage by panning up and down that straight line, because you know it doesn't. If it was like that and not like that, it would have fallen over. It has to be straight, and engineers have made that vertical. So you've got that. That's your reference object. You call that 0.000 degrees and minutes. So you've got the sun, which you're going to find later. That's the real angle. You've got the angle to there, which is 0.000. You've set. So you've shot the sun. So you now, when you get back to your office, without any prejudice, without any preconceived ideas, you do not know where north is yet. So you're going to do your measurement, and it's good science because you don't know any, you've not got any a priori expectations. You then go round the circle from that reference object, usually clockwise. I go round the circle, and I take the left-hand stone angle. So you go right round this circle, all the stones, and someone later will measure the height. You measure the height of the stone, because that needs recording, the left-hand edge, the right. Some people even take a profile of the shape of the stone. If we're here all day, you would take a profile of each stone. I have done this. I have got a plan ready to go on my website. But I've been doing this recently in the drought, because it's on the body of the foot here and unpleasant. So, how many stones are there in the circle matters, of course. I think in this one there are 16. And you can get the diameter, and each one of these stones will have an angle on it, and we have a centre here. So when you get home, you can measure the distance by tape to the beginning of that stone, the base of the stone, from underneath the top, like where you put one of these in. I've got the whole load of them with fluorescent red tops, but I couldn't find them at 7 o'clock this morning, which go in the soil. So your theodolite is centred on a point called the station, which is brightly coloured, and you put your tape in there, and you run it to there, and it will give you a length. And as you go round, this might not be the centre, but that won't matter. What will matter is on the drawing board that you put that as the centre of the drawing board, or the paper you've got on the drawing board, and you make a scale model. If you measured 34 feet to that point, then you're going to say you might make 34 feet equal something like 8 or 9 inches. I would make it a good size. So it would be 18 inches on the drawing board. So that's quite a good scale map. So your accuracy could be quite high, and until you've done that, you can't assess the shape. And you need a theodolite. So although they didn't need a theodolite because they knew what they were doing, in order to recreate that shape, we needed to use a modern instrument to make it quick to do that. So that's how I do plans, and then I produce a plan, I photocopy it down, and I either put it on a website or it goes in a book, and then I will look at Tom's plan then of the same site. I'm going to put this in the naught point with this marker here. They're getting a bit brittle, but that won't move now. We can put a bit of force on that. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to point at that stone. Let's pretend that the midsummer sun rises over that stone on the bluestone side. Okay? It doesn't, but it'll do. It's a model. So I'm going to run the 12 side. Can you make sure that can you loop it? No, there's a loop. Because the right angle makes itself. When these two ropes meet, then you've got a triangle made of these three numbers, 5, 12, 13. Yeah, that's it. Right. And I'm going to peg that there. Okay. And that there is a right angle. And we haven't made that right angle, the triangle has. And this is what Pythagoras was rattling on about. But the fact is that during the early waxing period of the moon, you get a period of night after the sun's gone down, which is good for hunting because you've got moonlight. And then at the full moon you can hunt very easily at night, and then your kill comes back, and during the waning moon you have party time at full moon. That's when sex happens, it's when eating a lot of meat happens, and it's when the hunters polish up their axes and get ready for the next hunting trip. This is a rather twee theory, but it's logical human existence or human reproductive life on Earth. Now this is fine because you then went and looked at other primates, that's monkeys basically too, and discovered that the human is the only one that mismatched that period. There was no other primate that has its menstrual period spaced at 29.5, which is, it's very sad that the pills they give you to stop conception are only 28 in a packet, and that the number is commonly thought of as being 28 days. Some people even think it's 30 days. So it's 29, just over 29.5 days. Now what we've done here is we've got 12 of them here and 13 of them here. So this is too little time for the year, which is 365 and a quarter roughly, and this is 383. There's somewhere in here where I could take this rope and I could swing it round and I would measure the length of the solar year. And if I pop that in there, this has moved along the rope, I think, over the years. Anyway, it doesn't matter. We have got a loop and I can push it through the loop. So if I put that through the loop now, and then pull that tight, that now, this length here is 12, okay, 12, and there's a bit left over. And that bit left over, if we use a megalithic yard, happens to be 1 foot. So a foot is the golden bit on top of the 12. You need the 7/19 of my lecture, you remember that? Yes. If you've got the solar year on this, the length of this in days, all you have to do is find a way of dividing that into 365. That's calibrated already in moons, and we know that moons are 29.5, and 2 of them's 59. So each 2 is 59 days. So you just have to find a way of marking this out equally, and you've got yourself a calendar. And then there's another factor, which is if you take this bit that hangs over here, that isn't the part of the foot, I don't know whether I've got it right or not, but if you take that back to here, it turns out that when you bend it back on itself, the length to there is the eclipse year. And therefore, that length there is the time between the 2 consecutive passages of the moon's nodes and the sun. Collisions of the sun. But that's how the local cosmos is arranged. That's how the sun, moon and their astronomy are arranged such that we can find out the sun and the moon's, we can find the date of we can find the high tides, low tides, the date of new moon, full moon, because once you've got the steps of full moons you can halve the length and you've got the new moon, haven't you? Yes. That in between. So you have got a magical artifact here that allows you to know the tide. For sailors that's essential. Anyone who works with anything to do with the sea needs to know what the tides are doing, especially if you're in a little boat. Because absolutely you don't cross. You saw that TV documentary of Ness of Broga where those people were sailing across the Sound of Ness and they had to pick their time to within half an hour, and otherwise they would have been swept to their deaths and all that. Well, the point is if they'd had one of these they wouldn't have needed to bother with all that faffing about they did on the programme. And I've had a group of 10-year-old kids at a festival of creativity at a posh school in Leicester. I mustn't say posh on camera. It's a privileged school in Leicester, near Kenilworth, where a 10-year-old kid went home and said to his dad said, "What do you do today at that festival of creativity, Angus?" or whatever his name was. And little Angus said, "Oh, I look out to forecast eclipses, Dad." And Dad clipped him round the ear and said, "Don't be a silly bugger." And the lad wrote to me. Via the chap who'd organised this group, and told me the story that he showed his dad how it was done, and his dad was amazed. His dad had been an astronomer for years, or was interested, and didn't realise that his son actually had found a way of doing it that didn't involve all the maths and all the complications and all the science. Didn't need an ephemeris. All he needed to do was to notice when an eclipse happened and record it on a rope, a complete metonic cycle of the sun and the moon. But you need a field 2,000 feet long if you're going to do it. If you're going to do it like properly, and that it's the best. And we have got that right near Stonehenge. It's called the Cursus. It's a flat runway just north of Stonehenge, where they don't know what it was for, but it would be ideal for doing rope work, where cosmic events were recorded on the rope, and you have the history of the astronomy of the place, like eclipses. Anomaly, you could have other things like transits of Venus, but the point is that this is an astronomical tool for the Stone Age, and it's a bloody miracle. It's a miracle.
How did that rope get converted into a calendar?
Well, it's already a calendar. It doesn't get converted. These are the moons, and if you start with a full moon, back there, moon, all right, and it starts there, then providing you've calibrated this rope right, then you've got the rest of the year with the moons and the sun and the dates all on it. So as you go through the year, you can record weather. You can almost weave it into cloth. If you imagine making a huge tapestry, because each year could be like a raster on the telly, it could be another line on the telly.
What would they have used instead of rope? Would it have been like willow
branches? They used nettle. We know that they used nettle rope, and we know that they used hemp rope in France.
Oh, hemp. Yeah.
And there was hemp was available because the climate was very different. It was warmer, and you know, hemp hasn't always been the evil ruiner of society as it is today. I mean, in Norfolk we've got Hempston, which is where they grew the hemp rope for the King's Navy in the Middle Ages, and there's lots of Hemel Hempstead. I mean, hemp was grown for rope because it made the best ropes for ships. I mean, I'm only showing you the rough basics, but the thing I want you to go away with is that you've seen that the way in which the sun and the moon and the earth operate is truly cosmically arranged to fit a Pythagorean triangle. And I don't know about you, but that blows me away. It did when I first noticed it, and it doesn't do other than send a shiver through me, because this is the breakthrough that our secular society needs in order to see that there is something beyond going down the pub in the evening. That in fact something is operating here that's a clever piece of software, if you like, geometric software, that explains how you can predict in advance where the sun and the moon are going to be and what you're likely to see. So instead of a chaotic universe that kills you, or that burns you, or that floods you, which we always are going to have, of geometry. And we have the number theory to support this. The male 3 meets the female 2. It's a sacred marriage of the sun and the moon.
It reminds me, who came up with this triangle idea as a tool in the dream?
Well, Stone Age people did. What do you mean, who discovered it?
Yeah, were they using it that far back?
Well, there's examples of... We have found one of these set up in Brittany. Right. There's one that's made out of stone in Brittany, where the hypotenuse, this is stone, and you run a rope, and it does 4 years. It's big. We're talking a great big quadrilateral. You've been there, haven't you?
Yes.
Back to sleep you. Pardon?
Carnac.
It's one of the Carnac-Limanio quadrilaterals.
3 rows of standing stones each go on.
Well, no, it's not one of the rows. It's a quadrilateral shape.